allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll start with personnel appointments. Motion, please. And a second. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nay? Okay, and the motion is carried. Next, we have our bid awards for construction project and the high school crawl space. We will do contracts 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 6A. Motion, please.
So,
And second.
okay.
Thank
We
you.
pulled out the co-ops.
Yeah, all right.
Seth motion, did you motion?
Yes, Kim and Seth. Kim,
Okay, thank you.
I'll motion now,
all in favor?
yeah. Aye.
Any nays? Okay, the motion is carried. Whereas the Board of Education, in accordance with Article 5A of the General Municipal Laws, invited sealed bids for the capital project and high school crawl space as follows. Contract 1, which was site demolition and construction, is being awarded to Boland's Excavating and Topsoil Inc., site demolition and construction. Such award in the total contract price of $383,000. Contract number 2, general trades demolition and construction, including ES-only abatement, is awarded to Upstate Companies LLC, and the total contract price of $3,650.
$3 million.
$3 million.
Is that a typo?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it is. $3,650,000. Contract number 3, plumbing, demolition, and construction, is awarded to Picarilli Mechanical Inc., total contract price of $732,000. Contract number 4, electrical demolition and construction, Nelcorp Electrical Contracting Corp., total contract price of $724,900. Contract number 6, high school asbestos, Sessler Environmental, total contract price of $216,400. And contract 6A, which is the high school crawl space, Sessler Environmental, total contract price of $330,900. Be it further resolved, the Board of Education hereby awards the contracts to the bidder specified herein for the project as set forth above, for the price specified and in accordance with the plans and specifications for such public works projects, said contract to be executed by the President of the Board of Education in a form to be approved by the district's legal counsel, and to provide for the furnishing of the required security for the performance of said contract. Example, performance bond and labor and materials payment bond in the amount of the individual contract price and in the form specified in the bid documents. Okay. And we next have contract number 5, which is a resolution to accept piggybacking proposal for contract number 5, HVAC train cooperative purchase. Motion, please.
So,
Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Yes. So I touched on it a little bit the other night, relative to the direction that we took with our HVAC bids. With going through the co-op bid, which was the only portion of the contract, or the only portion of our bids we did through the co-op. And what I think the outcome of that is our specificity with the manufacturer train in the contract or in our co-op specification that we made indicates to someone like Train that they are a sole source on a bid, which is not a great position for any organization really to be in if there are other acceptable options. I know originally they came in, we had a project estimate of 1370. I know originally, were they 2-ish, something like that, Carrie, right? 2.2. That's a strong indication that they know that they are the only ones that can bid on this, that can give a price on this and have their price there. So they've come down to 1.7, which is still 350,000 over what our project estimate was from our architects. Now I know there is another component of the overall construction or the capital project that is significantly over. I know the total still comes in under where we need to be, so in terms of a total, we can get this work done, no problem. What I'm concerned about is not really having a competitive part of our bid for HVAC and knowing from vendors that are wanting to bid on this that we can be more like in the 1.3 area, which is, $400,000 from where we are. I know that means we may have a couple of different kinds of controls for our rooftop units. The reason that I think it's a little bit compelling is because I know Train has not been a great solution provider for us. And the reason I know it's because we talked about it here for years, back when Bill was here and we had it come up in finance, and we knew that the service is not great from the manufacturer that we have been using here, which is Train. So, and I know it's, we're in that case now. I know our controls are not great through Train at the moment. So if it were, a certain percentage, I could sort of live with this. I'm also struggling, and I, say this to everybody, just, put it out there. I'm struggling with other parts of our project originally that I know are in need of getting completed, and I think we probably overspec them. And you can tell by the alternates that came in, I think our tennis courts are probably spec too high. And the numbers reflect that. I think the lowest one was 900 and some for that alternate, right, Carrie? Something like that, which is okay. But knowing that our tennis courts at the moment are not playable, I'm wondering if there's a couple of pathways, and I just want to get this out there for talking about it. One, we just go forward and say we don't care what the price is. It's under what we were told and what we were authorized to spend. We don't care. Two is we could accept the other bids, reject the HVAC bid because, for one, it's way higher than, significantly higher than what we had projected. And I guess three is we could rework that part. That would take more time. I don't think our timeline would be significantly impacted to reject the bid. after talking to a couple other vendors who have called and said, hey, we want to get in and bid this, but you only specified one vendor or one manufacturer. It's not anyone's, I'm not trying to say this is anyone's fault, it's just me wanting to get the most for our dollars here. Knowing that we're tight, knowing that there are student-facing, student-functioning parts of our original scope that we're not gonna get done. And I kind of think to myself, so if the gym had water running down on the floor, which we did go through at one point in time, what would we do? We'd fix it, we'd do something about it. It's the same way with these courts, is they're really not playable for us. So are we gonna padlock them this spring if we play, or next year when we have to play on them? Are we gonna let the community continue to be on them? We've said over and over, they are important because the community uses them, our students use them. So I guess what I'm saying is there's this being overpriced, and I'm not sure we're really getting the value out of that. There's something I think we should do. Those could be looked at individually or together. But I have to get it out there that I think we're not getting a great value because of the way this was done. And I'm not sure, even, Bill was very sure we wanted to have it this way. I'm not sure by having two separate control paths that we're doing the right thing. Or not by saying we can't do that we're doing the right
Well, I
thing.
don't think this came about because of Bill.
Did.
I'd like to hear from Carrie. I mean,
So,
that's,
Oh,
so,
that's just fine, yeah.
no, and I knew that this would be a discussion today.
Yeah,
So Carrie and I had lengthy conversations today. We've talked with, with Dave Vaughn, with our construction manager, and we talked it through with Bruce as well. And also just for my benefit, just to understand the history of how we came to this point. So, this particular piece of the project was co-op bid. And that's the piece that I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that Seth is finding objection with now at this point, for the reasons that you just explained. So, historically, my understanding is that the board at the time, and this is going back to 2019, a little over a year ago, and correct me if I'm wrong on this timeline, heard various presentations on purchasing presentations, from the Chase, specifically on co-op purchasing, just kind of in general. I'm referring to my notes here a little bit. And the Capital Project Liaison Committee, at the time was, two former board members who were on that committee and presented updates to the board at a number of different board meetings. Carrie jumping in at the end of January, again in February, ultimately resulting in the board moving to approve participation in the co-op bid at that time. So we moved forward through the project with this understanding. And so Seth is absolutely right. At this point, this is the board's project. So you do have options here. And I just want to make sure that the board is in the best position possible to make an informed decision as we move forward. So the option at this point is, there was some chatter about, roll call vote on this particular motion. And you can absolutely take a roll call vote. The board can also decide to reject it altogether and then to go back to an open bidding process for the HVAC, which would bring in a number of different vendors. Trane can absolutely rebid as an independent contractor at this point, and see where that puts us. So I asked Carrie today to research for us so that he could share what would the implications of that decision be. So what would that do to our timeline? How would that affect our ability to secure contracts with our other parts of the project, and to bond where we needed to do that? How would that affect the overall timeline in terms of moving forward with phasing and actual construction? And then also going back out to bid, what are the financial implications of that in terms of the advertising and those kind of pieces? So, what would we be putting out there at the potential for cost savings, or risk of of it not coming back favorable. We don't know what the outcome would be. But I'm not going to advocate for one or the other. This is your decision as a board. And so if you don't mind, I'd like to yield to Carrie just to provide some of that additional information. Dave may jump into it to address the compatibility of systems and what the long-term questions would be. So if that
Thank you.
please.
No, that was a good summary of how we got to the co-op. Yeah.
Okay, great. Carrie?
So, so this process, we've been at it for quite a while as far as even on the co-op side of it. I will say that one of the reasons why we chose co-op was mainly because when you have a vendor come in, you run the risk of change orders. So what happens is you can bid $200,000 on a project and throw together $300,000 in change orders later, thinking you got a great deal, and in the end you got burned. So one of the things about co-op, just the familiarity, it is basically the pricing is done by a book. It is not a numbers thrown out arbitrarily. It's done by a book. They have the cost listed out. It's renewed every year. So the district kind of knows what exactly they're buying. Everything is based on square footage or price per material or hour. So one of the reasons, and Bill's not here, we had this conversation with Mark Snyder. We had Kenny Akins on the board at the time. His feeling was that he did not want to switch, and he did not see being a positive move to switch to different vendors as far as for control systems. Now, I will say this, Seth, the control systems here, I don't think are horrible. I think the issue that we have had is that over the years, we've had different generations of controls. Correct me if I'm wrong, David.
There are different generations, yes.
Same control, so I think what's happening is as technology improves, the older, let's say it's 3 tiers, the older setup is not talking to the newer setup as well as it should. So I think as anything else within a building or your own home, constant maintenance of that is important. So there's 2 sides of it. There's a control side, there's a mechanical side. Sometimes we look at something and think it's a control issue where it's actually a mechanical issue. So, having one vendor that's handling all of it was something that we looked at as a positive to the district. We also looked at it as a positive going to a co-op. We had talked about doing the entire project in that same manner, but it just didn't work because of the site work, so we scrapped it. As far as delaying or not approving the HVAC side of it, you're running into a minimum of 6, probably 8-week delay. Our goal at this point was to start the cafeteria right in January. We're going to start phasing into that cafeteria in the elementary library. And without having a contractor for HVAC lined up for that could delay those other contractors, causing possible litigation from them because it's delaying their start times and time is money, of course. So that's an issue that we would have. As far as going out to rebid, those costs probably between $5,000 and $10,000. This would have to, that would be put back onto the project cost.
So another pathway might be, can we do, if we issued an addendum to our current bid that would allow, you wouldn't change your spec at all, so it wouldn't necessarily be starting the process over. It would be say, here's a clarification, it's serving as an addendum that would allow for another vendor, another set of vendors to come in. You know what I'm saying? So you wouldn't have your 7 to 8 week, you'd be,
I think you can't just do it overnight though. You've got to give them time to bid.
I think the notice
I'm not going to
guidelines
bid,
are
but
still
you would want to
intact.
usually you have to get a timeline as far as for bidders to put time in. You say, listen, we're going to open bids on Friday of this week. That gives no one any time to do that. I would think that it's only fair to give vendors longer time, so therefore that delay happens. You also talked about.
yeah, I'm just not sure about the 7 to 8 weeks. I don't know.
That's coming from construction manager and the architect as of this morning. By the time you go out to advertise, by the time you go out to do this, and then pull bids in, and then open, and then award, 6 to 8 weeks. I would think that in phasing also. So that's from them, that's per their response this morning. The other thing, there's no guarantee that the price is going to be cheaper. You run the risk of or having another bidder decide that they're gonna take another job because they can move on it quicker, I don't know.
When were the project estimates? They're from,
DDs were done, if I'm not mistaken, in June of 19. Yeah, because the SCD, those plans went to SCD.
It's been a while.
right,
They went to SCD in the summer of 19. We voted on October of 18, went to SCD summer of 19, they got approved. We then went to bid in February of 2020, which then the bids came in incredibly high, and now we're at where we're at right now. So those DD estimates were, so you run into it, I mean, to be honest, you run into a high and low. I mean, if you look at the plumbing estimate, it's double on that,
The only thing was is that that's by two contractors, and so it was competitive. So you have a verification of approximately that those are real numbers because, those are contractors that are competing with one another and pulling in equipment manufacturers to supply their price. That one I'm not, I know it's $342,000 over our initial estimate, but because you had too close right on that seems more realistic to me versus the other one.
I think what I see in the world I live in, everything's up in price. And anything with commodities, which HVAC is, the one that surprises me is electric. I would expect that to be much higher because of copper's at an all-time high or a 10-year high. To be only 25% over is what I'm seeing, and pretty much everybody that I deal with is 25 to 50% higher now than they were pre-COVID. So at 25%, it's I look at it as a realistic number because I know what.
Except for every other part of the contract, that's every other part of the bids here, so.
What's that?
I mean, the site, everybody else had.
HVAC is 25% over. Yeah, well, general construction isn't dealing with.
Well, they would say their list of things too. I mean, I agree with you, pricing is higher, but pricing is also lower than it was earlier in the year. Yeah, because we rejected all the bids.
Yeah, that I don't know what they were before, but I am saying
Yeah.
since the first of the year to now, I've seen stuff.
Yeah.
Double the price. A lot of stuff that I'm doing is now
Mhm.
twice as much, so it's passed on.
Yeah.
Maybe for the benefit of the board, could you expand a little bit on the de-scoping and how the numbers got to where they are today from where they started? And then my follow-up to that is, do we know that's the best they can do?
So there was de-scoping done on every bidder that was considered lowest at that time. I will talk on one other bidder failed to leave out quite substantial piece of the project with the crawl space. Roughly about $1.2 million based upon their price listing. So that's why one of them was rejected due to that situation. So when they de-scoped, they de-scoped everyone else to make sure that their viable could do the job, their pricing was adequate or sufficient. One of the things they looked at with Train, the two big items was it was PM costs, project management costs, I would think, that were involved during the install. And then the other was roof cuts that were within the general trades. That was on the general trade side, but was also included, it was kind of double counted. So that one they took out. It's not like they're not doing the work, the general trades is doing the work instead. Those are the two major ones that I after the fact. Again, this was, I wouldn't look at any of the co-op as a cost savings when we discussed it from the very beginning. It was more of a
It was assurance.
reduction of risk to the
Right.
district regarding change orders and kind of knowing what those costs are ahead of the game before you get halfway into a project and the change orders start flying in and you're kind of stuck with them at that point to make sure you finish the project. And also, the big one was to stay consistent with one manufacturer, one vendor that handles everything currently. So that was really the discussions that I was a part of with Bill, with the committee, and that's where the direction went with it.
Do you have a sense historically of, to respond to Seth's concern about Train not being a consistent solution provider?
I've never personally had any issues with Train. Like I said, I know that, I think that we're probably looking at it much closer at this point. But I don't think it's necessarily, I mean, when Train is called, they're here. I know that right now they're putting together a preventive maintenance plan for the district of priorities and things that are less prioritized to focus on in the next coming years, based upon the building condition survey and things like that. So they're being proactive rather than reactive, I think. I had a little time with it, David, but I mean, you can add anything to it.
No, I mean, they have come down a couple times they've been here. There have been a couple things. They did say, the one gentleman, who is the head of the mechanical part of it, very, very good. He did say, him and I were talking, that maybe some of the stuff that was needed to be taken care of should have been taken care of ahead of time, but there was a difference in people swapping around within the business, so that kind of threw a monkey wrench in there, getting down here to do stuff. Well, other than that, now this guy is like, we're gonna be here when you call us, and we need to be here for a meeting sometime within the next January, I was thinking June, why the heck? Before the snow, I'm thinking June. He said that they would wanna be here in the beginning of January to set up a meeting so we could find out what needs to be taken care of, what is the highest priority, what is our lowest priority right now. So, I mean, he's working with us, so this is a newer guy, so that's about all I can tell you with them. I mean, like Carrie said, their system, it's got like 4 different levels in it. I mean, flat out, honestly, I told them when I spoke to the gentleman that was the controls part of it, because I'm used to a system that is very, very user-friendly. Luke and I had talked about this, very user-friendly. When I wanted to do something, it would tell me on the screen what I wanted to do. I told Train, they got a lot of upgrading to do. I said, because it sucked. I said, I'll be flat out honest with you. And, but that guy said, you tell me what you want, we will do it. We will figure out a way to do it. So I hope that they are gonna uphold their end of the bargain. I mean, I can't, say that they're going to, but if they don't, we're gonna have a lot of arguments, that's for sure. But that's about all I can tell you about them. They are being very proactive right now with this change of people, to get things more organized in the way it should be for us. Because they are this guy was extremely disappointed that it was not taken care of before.
I think
this
that's
switch.
why it came up, it's come up in finance before, these are issues, and that's kind of why I'm thinking, and I think I respect what you're saying. I think we definitely have got their attention. We're about to give them a $1.7 million contract, so we probably got the A-lister and said, get down to Delhi. It's no longer a couple of thousand here or there. I mean, I would do that if I was in charge. I would say, make them happy. So I hear you. But that's why I was familiar with it from the beginning, because I knew it was a problem here. That we had one unit was down for a long, long time. The one above the middle school wing was just down. So
This might be a naive question, but if this was to be reopened and a different contractor came in, different system, what are the long-term implications in terms of, or expectations for district spending, district commitment to, if you have somebody new coming in, there are different components? Does this put us in a position that over the next several projects, we're replacing everything to be in line with that? I know previously a concern had been that, the district doesn't want to be pigeonholed into always having to commit with one particular manufacturer for, the next however many years. Does that making a shift to somebody different, would that also commit us to making that shift away from one and replacing it all? What are those and I don't know, I'm just now
A little bit of the answer to your question, Kelly, may be that, so if you open it up, it wouldn't necessarily be manufacturers that bid it. Because it's in the co-op, we said it had to be Train.
Okay,
So Train, you notice they're the only manufacturer in your contractor list. Whereas the other people are contractors, so they use different pieces and components from different manufacturers, because they're not necessarily spelled out. We have a spec that is, so we can use other manufacturers. This, we said that only Train can do this work. So for a lot of this, Train is going out and subcontracting it, because they don't do wiring and piping and all that. They're gonna go out and get another contractor to come in. So if you switch it, you would have a control person that could use multiple vendors for their equipment.
would we have a say in what those vendors were, what type of equipment we would want them to use, or are we,
You could, depends.
do we give up those managerial rights?
Depends, you could spec a type of equipment, or you could say, here's the load we want this unit to be, this is, you can, and then if it's Carrier or York, it's gonna be competitive. And ultimately is, we might have different vendor units, different vendors that have different units on our roof, but if it's cold, if it works, then it meets our spec. That's ultimately what we care about, I guess. Now, in terms of controls though, it's gonna make it, now he's got a few different generations, right? You said, Dave, that you're working with
You
now.
have two different companies, two different computerized systems fighting each other. That's the problem. They always, the last school that I was in, we originally did this. That's what they did. They had two different systems. One system was originally there. We had a building project. They brought in another system. Those systems never, ever talked. So it was always a finger pointing thing. When it was this guy, no, it's this guy's fault. This guy would say, no, it's this guy's fault. In the end, it ended up being on the school, and we paid millions of dollars to get rid of one of them to go back to the original one. So I don't know if you're saving money in the long run.
Yeah, so I'm not sure, we're not integrating though in this, these would be, the idea is that we're gonna have one control system for the whole school, so you're not gonna, that isn't what I don't think this project is. It's that your replacement units would be on a system, you have another system to control that, there wouldn't be one for both, is I guess what my understanding is anyway.
Probably wouldn't be one for both, but at some point in time, they have to cross-communicate. And they never do. I think it's wrong that they don't, but they do not. And it's a headache on our end, because we're trying to figure out, well, this is the problem, or is it, these guys are the problem, or is it this problem? And then we're the ones stuck. So, money-wise, you get stuck. And that's not right either, but I can't, sorry. I had so many problems in that school trying to fight the two different systems. I don't really have a good taste in my mouth for it. I'm sorry, I just don't. And I know what you're trying to say to get a cheaper rate, a better aspect of things, and I'm really not, myself, I'm not overly impressed with Train, but that's because I think maybe because I've been with another system for so many years that I know that system inside and out. Learning this system, I think it's a little bit harder to understand, but I think if we could upgrade some things, in the long run, I think it would help out. I just think once you already have Train here, you might just as well stay with them, because that system is already in here. No matter, I mean.
I think that decision was made a long time ago.
We are gonna end up paying through the nose later on if we try to integrate something and it doesn't work. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I guess my other point is that I don't know that is in the scope to integrate here, it's that the new units are not part of, so
But there is an energy management system already in place, correct? So anything we do is gonna be part of that energy management system.
It's gonna be part of that system, in some sense it will be part of that system. Yes.
So just an energy savings alone, if they're not talking, you could eat up that $300,000 pretty quick. And then if this was to be put out to bid again, and everything came in higher, you can't really go back to training and say, well, we guess we'll go with the 17, even though they've already dropped the money, so that's a gamble too, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, the other vendors are saying, it's more like what you have is your estimate. This is what they're saying, this work is worth, not what you have. So, yeah, there's risk in it. When I see somebody come in as high as they came in, it looks to me like we're being gouged. And so that's why I have the concern. To me, I don't walk in a building and, really notice Train or anybody else. It's the history that I know has been an issue, that I've heard about here, and I don't think, this doesn't appear to be a solution. It appears to be expensive, so that's why I'm bringing it up. I'm okay if people don't, 400 is 400, but then I'm gonna be asking what we're gonna be doing about other things in school, without like some other student-facing things, that's all. So, again, I'm looking at this like this is a finite amount of money, and I wanna be very careful. And I don't like to feel like we're not getting great value out of something, so that's why I bring it up. I think we all need to know, go into that eyes wide open if that's what we want to do.
Anything else?
I think you make a good point that we always need to be doing our due diligence because we do have several bid alternates in the project. And that's where they currently stand as alternates right now. They are not necessarily budgeted for. And it depends on where all these pieces come in and what your bottom line is. There is a finite amount of money. And then, once we determine that, you'll be asked, how do you want to prioritize now within your bid alternates? And those were listed in the documents that you've been sent. But one of those is the tennis courts. And since that was placed as a bid alternate, they have deteriorated. And arguably, so have some of the other bid alternates, right? So, there are different ways that we can look at addressing that. And that certainly should be further conversation, including discussion of, as we start to conceptualize our next project. But there are things that are currently sitting as bid alternates that may not be able to wait for our next project. So, there's no really right or wrong here because there are so many variables that we just can't control for and we can't predict. But I think that you're right and that we wouldn't be doing our due diligence if we didn't go into this particular resolution with as much information, as factual information as we have control over, and in understanding what the implications of going in one particular direction would be, including the time and the cost associated with that as well. That's also a risk. So having said all of that, if there aren't any other questions, then right now we'd yield back to Tammy to, you mentioned a roll call vote. If that's something that you're still looking for, we can certainly call a roll call vote on that. And then decide next steps once that goes around. If that's the pleasure of the board, that's completely up to you. Proceed with the vote.
It's up to me, I don't get a call over. I don't know if that's.
If one member, well, if one member is asking for it, then we'll do a roll call vote, but Sue will do the roll call.
Okay. Yeah, sure, okay.
Just clarification, before we vote, is your recommendation, Mrs. Zimmerman, Mr. Schultz, Mr. Sissio, that we go with the trans cooperative purchase, correct?
I would say
I'm comfortable with the decision, but it's, the recommendation comes from the superintendent.
Correct.
And
That would be my recommendation, to proceed in this direction.
because of all the things that were discussed.
Correct.
Thank you.
I feel that the risks outweigh the potential benefits.
Yes, are you on Misu?
Yes.
Tammy,
Yes.
Seth,
No,
Lucy,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Kimberly,
Yes.
and James.
Yes.
Okay, and the motion is carried. Resolution accepting the acceptance of piggyback proposal for contract number 5, HVAC train cooperative purchase, Delaware Academy Central School District at Delhi's capital project, whereas the Board of Education of the Delaware Academy Central School District at Delhi at a district meeting of the qualified voters of the district on October 11th, 2018, was authorized to undertake a capital project which would consist of construction of improvements to and reconstruct various school district facilities, including bathrooms, cafeteria, and kitchen areas, window replacements, roofing and paving, together with site and other improvements, furnishings, equipment, and incidental expenses in connection herewith the capital project. And whereas the board determined itself to be lead agency for the purposes of the state Environmental Quality Review Act, (SECRA), and declared the capital project to be a type 1 action, the implementation of which, as proposed, will not result in a significant environmental impact. And whereas at a regular meeting of the board on November 26, 2018, the board approved the capital project along with certain expenditures and bonding related thereto. And whereas Section 103 of the General Municipal Law permits school districts to make certain purchases of goods and equipment and enter into certain contracts for services as may be required by the district through piggybacking onto a contract led by the United States of America or any agency thereof, any state or any county or political subdivision or district therein, if such contract was let to the lowest responsible bidder or on the basis of best value in a manner consistent with the New York State law and made available for use by other governmental entities, altogether piggybacking. And the board has authorized participation by the district in cooperative purchasing networks for such purpose. And whereas Train Commercial Systems and Service did submit a piggybacking proposal for contract number 5 HVAC train cooperative purchase for the sum total amount of $1,722,000. No alternatives were proposed, and whereas the board has reviewed the benefits of piggybacking for this contract and concluded that doing so would provide value and cost savings to the district. Now, therefore, let it be resolved that the Board of Education of the Delaware Academy Central School District at Delhi, after review and discussion, and upon the recommendation of the Capital Project Committee and the design team, Highland Associates and the Chase Construction hereby approve, subject to final approval by District Council per the next paragraph of this resolution, Train Building and Solutions piggybacking proposal for contract number 5, HVAC train cooperative purchase as set forth herein. And be it further resolved that the President of the Board of Education is hereby authorized to sign and deliver the contract for the contract number 5 HVAC train cooperative purchase, subject to final approval by district legal counsel of its terms and conditions, including but not limited to the district's receipt of opinion from train counsel with respect to the municipal contract underlying the piggybacking proposal and any construction and performance security, along with any documents necessary to effectuate the terms and conditions of this resolution and implement the same on behalf of the district, and be it further resolved that this resolution shall take effect immediately. The next item is bid rejections for the capital project and high school crawl space. Motion, please. And a second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
May I jump in at this point real quick? Just to bring to the board's attention, the language under the Jupiter base bid in, I believe it was 6A, if you look at the language on page 5. When the Jupiter bid originally came in, it appeared to have been at the low bid, but as Mr. Schultz described as part of the descoping process, it was determined that Jupiter had failed to include the full cost of the asbestos abatement in the bid. That every other bidder at that point did catch and included in their bids. And so when that was added to their original base bid for the $142,700 under 6A, it brought their bid up to $1,422,000, $422,700, which then became not the lowest bid, but actually the highest bid out of the competitive bidders on that particular line item. So that was added as a mechanism to protect the district should Jupiter come back and question the district's failure to award to them based on their original bid. Just recognizing that they had neglected to include a chunk of that in that bid. So I just wanted to clarify that piece.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? And the motion is carried. Whereas the Board of Education, in accordance with Article 5A of the General Municipal Laws, invited sealed bids for the capital project and high school space as follows. Contract number 1 was site demolition and construction. And the bids that have been rejected, Vaz, base bid of $422,000. Bothar, base bid $527,602. Delaware bulldozing, base bid $433,199. And Upstate, base bid $484,515. Contract number 2, general trades, demolition and construction, including ES only abatement. Andrew Mancini, base bid $3,847,000. Midstate Industries, base bid $4,050,000. Foz, base bid $3,897,000. And Daniel Lynch, base bid $4,491,000. Contract number 3, plumbing, demolition and construction. And the bid rejected is Picarilli Mechanical, base bid $732,000. Contract number 4 was electrical, demolition and construction. Those bids were Matco Electric, base bid $813,000. Dykow Electric, base bid $880,000. And Blanding, base bid of $783,000. We covered contract number 5, which was the HVAC. Contract number 6, the high school asbestos. Cascon, base bid of $278,000. Jupiter, base bid $254,000. And we had Mrs. Zimmerman's comments. United Safety, base bid $261,200. Two Brothers, $242,500. ERSI, base bid $171,000. And Neoplanta, $261,000. And contract 6A, high school crawl space. Cascon, base bid $490,000. Jupiter, base bid $142,700. with the caveat due to the failure of Jupiter to include the cost of asbestos abatement in its bid, which abatement costs were included in all other bids received by the district, and which cost, when added to the Jupiter bid, results in a total Jupiter bid of $1,422,700, which is not the lowest responsible bid. United Safety bid $383,000, Two Brothers $691,000, ERSI $384,800, and Neoplanta $426,420.
I think there's a typo here with Picarelli Mechanical, or that's who was accepted, wasn't it?
We were just talking about that, Carrie just brought that,
Contract number 3.
yeah. We need to, make an amendment. They shouldn't have been rejected, it should have been Slavic company,
Okay.
so we need to change that.
There's a Jupiter spelled a couple different ways,
I'm so sorry.
and what the other one, Mancini, missing a vowel or two.
Okay, so as Trustee Tucker points out, the Picarelli Mechanical, contract number 3, that is the bid that was accepted. So we do need to replace that. We don't have the information, we just rejected it.
Slavic and company,
So the bid that's rejected for contract number 3, plumbing, demolition, and construction is Slavic and Company at a base bid of $778,000. Oh, no problem. Do we need to do a different motion to accept that change?
Yes.
So I'll take a motion, please, to accept the actions with the recommended changes that we just discussed. Sean, you have a second?
I'll second.
James, thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any nays? Okay, and the motion is carried. At this point, I will take
I
a.
did see there was one other discrepancy that I noted. Which one? 6 and 6A, right? Oh, it's right here. So it's still not low. Thank you. No, I was wrong.
Okay,
We're good.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
At this point, I will take a motion to adjourn our meeting.
So.
Second?
second,